Oh, well, thank you for being with us. So I have, I mean, truly hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of questions for you.
Okay.
Like days of whittling down and organizing the questions, and really every single question that I'm going to ask you, know that there are, 10 or more people that ask the same question. So I've
Wow.
really kind of whittled it down to that.
Okay, let's roll with it. I'm here for the journey.
Okay, cool. Okay. So just starting with our own before we get into these questions, hair loss.
Mm.
Hair loss. And maybe if you could break it down for us, in the differences between and kind of ground us in, if you could walk us through telogen effluvium,
Mm.
my all-time fave, um, postpartum hair loss, male hair loss, menopause, autoimmune hair loss. And within that, maybe we can like dive a little more into hypothyroidism, alopecia,
Okay.
and then like inflammatory hair loss,
So
something
just
else.
even based on the way that you positioned some of those questions, we can already kind of categorize, and maybe you can take notes, and that way we can really create some synergy, which the community will really be able to take away with. So a lot of things get so convoluted, right? It's so we don't know. And you see like inflammatory, alopecia, telogen effluvium, androgenic. Hair loss is going to be either inflammatory, genetic, hormonal, nutritional, and a combination of all the above, right? So when we're talking about inflammatory hair losses, those are your alopecias, inflammatory hair losses, or any type of alopecia. When you talk about a telogen effluvium, that is a rapid hair shedding of the growth, the hair growth function, the cycles are thrown off. So
Mhm.
telogen effluvium is in the telogen phase, and the telogen is the shedding phase, but you get this continual rapid shedding of the hair fiber. An anagen effluvium is an anagen in the growing phase where the hair follicle is literally at a blood source and it's growing and it's locked in. And that anagen stays phase can last anywhere from 2 to 7 years, depending on DNA, lifestyle, all those other factors we'll get into. So the anagen effluvium, again, is a rapid shedding, but it's shedding in the growing phase. And the reason that we know this is because we can see the follicle is still attached when it comes out of the hair, meaning that bulb is still was locked in and wanting to receive more nutrients. So
Mhm.
inflammatory hair losses are going to be anything alopecia related, where you have scarring. We can get into some when we get into male hormonal, androgenic, genetic. Think of those in that category, and let's really keep the effluviums are a whole nother category in themselves. So those are going to be things like shedding. They don't necessarily result in massive space or what we call baldness, but you feel like
Mhm.
there's density losing, right? That your part is a little bit wider. It's not really a necessary wide open space, but there is a visual and the overall density of the hair, and you see remnants of your hair following you around. It's in your
Mhm.
shower and your sheets, like not in your shower from shampooing, just like literally it's a big difference. You see it in your car, you see it on your clothes. So those effluviums, if you want to take it by focusing on topics that kind of deal with more of those rapid shedding, that way we can kind of
Let's
get those
let's
things
start with the
going.
effluviums.
Okay,
Walk
yes, let's start with
through
the effluviums. Let me go back a little bit and just let's talk about what a hair fiber really is. There is no such thing as hair health once it comes out of the scalp. For me as a trichologist and my philosophy, once your hair is what we obsess over, what we see, that's your fabric. So I see that as a textile. I see that as silk, satin, a wool, a combination. Hair health is really what's happening below the surface. It's all those cells that are splitting, that are being nurtured by all of the our nutrients, our blood levels, our tissues, our cells. That's hair health. That's before it even becomes a fiber. So when we are talking about the hair fabric, that's more of a respecting the integrity of fiber like we do any other upholstery. So I want to kind of create that space as well. But more importantly, in the effluvium, you are really seeing a breakdown in the massive amounts of hair that are shedding. Any hormonal shifts in the body is always going to win because hair is also a non-essential tissue. So whenever the body is depleted of certain nutrients or shifts in hormones or minerals, if our larger necessary vital organs are depleted of these things or they're in a healing phase, the hair will always lose. So that is what triggers these ideas of effluviums. That means there's blood flow on the scalp so that hair follicle can be healthy and it can grow back, but there is some shift in the body that is causing this rapid hair growth. I mean, this rapid hair loss.
Before we dive even deeper into the effluviums, because it's just like there's so much there, can I get you to riff on two things? Because I'm loving your analogies of all the textiles. I feel like I'm probably like a rough, raw silk. I'm not a silk or a satin. I'm like a rough, raw silk. But can I get you to just drop your thoughts on this? One is this thought of external hair care. We could think of that more like makeup. And the internal hair care, meaning diet, supplementation, anything that is ingestible internal, we could look at that more as like skincare. It's like the skincare versus makeup treatment.
I'm going to say where I think we need to go in the 21st century with hair is think of that fiber as dry cleaning, not like a makeup. It's a dry cleaning. And that's where we need to be taking our ideas in the way that we treat it, the way that we appreciate it, because just environmental factors, we'll get into all that stuff. We've got to recondition our minds, and my belief and philosophy, as I see a lot of hair loss, is sometimes literally mechanical, and it's guided by improper care of the fabric. So the psyche has, for me, my mission is to change the psyche. It's dry cleaning. It's not makeup, because it is how I know you have a bag or a sweater or a shoe that you had for years that you take care of, that you nurture. All of us have some type of fabric around our lives that we really respect. That is what your raw, rough silk is. That is where we need to, and how we provide you the tools, the understanding, the maintenance of it. Like, it's not about shampoo, it's the maintenance. It's a rhythm. It's totally having a love affair with this fabric, so that part, I don't want people to, it's not a lipstick because that washes off and goes off. No, this is literally your body's fabric, and you don't get any more of it. This is it. So if we can approach it that way, I think we are going to empower just anyone you're going to respect how you touch it, how you think about it. And that's going to change the hair health and the hair wellness market, is we've got to shift that. So I totally love the skinification of the scalp. Yes. But I want for me, it's my mission to get people to recognize that literally this is fabric. So I want them to think about dry cleaning, like think about your dry cleaning routines. And that's how that's going to be the fun part of investigating and seeing how are we going to reimagine what hair care really is about.
Okay, cool. Okay. Oh, I want to dive more into that.
Okay.
Two more questions before we get back into the effluviums. I'm just going to throw this one out there. And I didn't even know that I was going to go here. But as you're speaking, it's like, I think we just need to get this one out of the way. What are your thoughts around so many cultures? There's such reverence for the hair. Your power is in your hair. Your psychic power is in your hair. You would never cut your hair. There is that type of reverence. And I hear you speaking about it. I don't know if you're going all the way there. I definitely am hearing the reverence, and we'll get into how to care for it. But what are your thoughts around that?
So I'm gonna just be full disclosure. I practice a spiritual belief system that this is all living. My body is just of reverence to energy. When you have the gift of, I believe, hair, it's not just the physiological aspect, it's also the emotional, the spiritual, our thoughts. And because when you're dealing with hair loss and some of the things that I encounter, a lot of that is 90% of every case has some level of stress related to it. Even it's just the anxiety and stress of, oh my gosh, I'm losing my hair, I'm bald. So
Mhm.
a lot of my practice really is trying to connect people to something bigger, because your hair is bigger than you. So my thing is breath. That if I can, I believe in connecting to breath. And when it comes to hair and massaging and making a connection with scalp, I think that is the reverence without getting too like spiritual soapboxy. I think that when you are massaging and circulating, you're creating energy and creating follicular turnover, relaxing all of the hair papilla, those muscles. You are reducing stress in your breathing. You're also oxygenating the body internally. So there is a huge connection to me where the health of your hair, not the length of it, not the texture of it, but the health and the vitality of it is such a reflection of mind, body, spirit. And if we can make all those connections, like we're humans, right? Part of the human experience is all these challenges where I'm such all over the place at different times in my eating, my emotional state. But I do believe I have enough practices to be centered. And what trichology does is makes you aware of all these factors that may impact you or that are going to impact your hair care. And most 90% of the times, it's going to be off of how your thoughts, being mindful of your diet, being mindful of your genetic makeup, being mindful of everything you're putting in your body, but also what you're thinking and then how you're caring. So I think it's important when we think about having optimal hair care. For me, you can't talk about one without talking about the other. And that's just where I think I see hair going from if we're going to be hair wellness, all those parts have to be a part of the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. Like everything, I think we,
Yes.
we all know this to be true, yet we're all still searching for the silver bullet, the magic pill, but
Well, you're
everything.
doing no. I see what you're doing. That's the exciting part. It's happening. It's the doing. So I think we need to give ourselves more grace. You are doing it. And I think that's like where I struggle sometimes in this, because no one is ready there. I think the responsibility of empowering us to make relationships with scalp and hair out of faith and empowerment, and out of, oh, my fear and, oh my gosh, what I have to do, because it's a process and it's a relationship with you. To heal your hair and to get the hair at the ideal hair with that you want, it's a gentle relationship with you having honest conversations about, okay, it could be a plethora of things because science is so new. So it really is about, you making that relationship with yourself. Okay, what's important to me? Where can I make the shift? Can I make it in my nutrition? Do I want to supplement? Do I want to get hair transplants? Do I want to use? There's so many options, and we don't have to judge each other. I just think it's great that they're out there. It's being able to identify what is uniquely going to be beneficial to you and having the right team of people around you to guide us in that journey. And that's going to be nutritionists, the medical practitioners, endocrinologists, dermatologists. It's a community and it's collaborative. And I think that's the exciting part. I think it's time for us to be more collaborative and learn and grow from each other, because we ultimately are making everybody healthier, more aware and empowered.
Mhm. Thank you for that. I'm glad that we could kick off the conversation by going all the way there so we can
Yeah.
into, like everything, hair is a printout of your thoughts, your feelings, your daily practices. And it's such a signifier of what's going on inside. You know, it really is. It's the icing on the cake. And there's no shortcut.
There isn't. And I mean, in reality, there are just some, unfortunately, some genetic things that can affect that, right? There are, the reality is, I think about children who, have, complete alopecia areata, just out of a genetic coding in their bodies.
Mm-hmm.
I think also we have to be empowering our minds to see beauty through different lenses as well. Of course, they have options, but hair is that identifier, but there are some genetic realities out there where, how do they fit into this? Or if the reality is they've gone to a point where, there is no blood flow and they are in a scarring alopecia, or they are, the follicle is destroyed and it's not coming back.
Mm-hmm.
What is our responsibility in helping to ensure that that perspective of beauty is valued and not a complete reflection of their internal? So it does get into all these weird, I should say this, it makes us have to be so individual and unique to our individual selves, which I think is the beauty of beauty, because each one of us are so uniquely individual, and trichology forces us to have that conversation, because I can't go to Amanda and be like, oh my gosh, what did you use? And think that what you use is going to work for me. So
Mm-hmm.
it makes us realize that it takes ownership of making the relationship with yourself. You have to touch your scalp. You know your eating patterns. You know your body's health. You know when something is off. That relationship is with self. And that is why I see scalp as such an intimate, almost a spiritual practice in self-care, because it is you really getting to build that relationship with yourself. And I just think, what a great place to not only see the benefit of it externally, but then what it does for you internally. It's ritualized. I think shampooing is a ritual. I think the way that we are conditioned to spend that time with just in that crown chakra is like, exercise it, release it. There's so much power that lies there, that I'm really excited about getting people, and women in particularly, to connect to that part of who they really are.
Yeah.
Because there's so much magic in that part of the head that is going to be so beneficial to that hair fiber. And that's really what we believe we want. But I think that's just like the icing on the cake. I'm babbling, so just stop me when
No,
I'm.
I love it. Now that we've established that your scalp is a temple
Yeah,
and hair care is a spiritual ritual, I feel really comfortable to proceed with this conversation. I'm glad we've arrived. I think everybody will feel inspired knowing, like, yes, if we can come at it from that place, and then we can get into the nitty-gritty of like
love
10,000
it.
questions around dandruff. But
Of course.
always important to establish like truly why we're here and really
Yeah.
where we're coming from.
And
Okay.
it's such a love connection. I say, get your partners involved, just touching the scalp massages, which are going to be great. Get comfortable with your scalp. Like, do you know you have knots? What does it feel like? Most people have no idea of just the makeup of what their scalps feel like, and all the tension that is stored in that part of the body. Once you start examining it's life changing, because your body will crave it. It's like you're opening up these portals of releases that are going to just be so beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, just thinking, just even you talking about it is, whoa, that like wildly orgasmic feeling of like if someone touches your head, like,
Yeah,
do
because we
you
love
have,
shampoos. We love shit. We go to the salon and everyone you want the person that's going to give you the best shampoo, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have, just while we're here, do you have a daily practice or when you go in and do self massage on your scalp?
So have I manage an autoimmune scalp condition called central centrifugal cicatricial alopecia. And it's stress induced. It is in something that is problematic and primarily found in women of African descent. And it is, we do, again, like all autoimmune, right? Why the healthy tissues attack healthy tissues, we do not know. that is kind of what led me in this direction of how I really pursued scalp care early in my hair career. So for me, like I'm in a flare up now. I stay wrapped because I have a specific ritual of when I'm in a flare up of how I just have to let it do its thing.
Mm.
But I'm able to, I have no scarring because I learned at a very early age through my own experimentation that I knew I did not want to get corticosteroid shots in my scalp. I know I didn't want to be on anything medical based or medicine based or prescription based. So that established my relationship with understanding inflammation in the body. What is autoimmune, plant based, changing the way I took care of my scalp and hair. So I say I have very different rituals at different phases in my hair cycle. It's in a really great place right now, so I keep serums in and I just leave it alone, you know, so I have to like figure out where my rhythm is. But yes, and when I have those moments, I'm forever massaging my head. I use a lot of red light. We're going to go into those other things, but I treat my scalp and hair like my skin. I do.
Mm.
I baby it that way because I'm just so grateful that it continuously shows up for me and performs in these follicles, even for whatever stress induced things or whatever I'm not giving my body enough of. I'm grateful that it shows up for me all the time. So I have again, I respect it. I respect this body and this scalp in a way because it's allowing me to maintain and keep a head of hair because I have such reverence for it continuously showing up. And so that's kind of how I navigate it, give it what it needs.
Okay, beautiful. Um, so if we were to go back to effluviums, I've experienced telogen effluvium many times. And so if we were to just give, so people can organize in their mind, the telogen effluvium is going to come 2 to 3 months after an event like a virus, a divorce, a surgery. It's some major stressor to the body. And you'll walk us through telogen as a growth phase, and how that manifests in that 2 to 4 month period after the event. And then anagen effluvium. What are the causes of anagen effluvium?
So anagen, both the effluviums are any disruption, anything where there is a disruption in the cycle. Again, we cannot pinpoint. That's the other challenge of understanding hair loss or any type of scalp concern is that it's multifactorial, meaning it's not just one thing. So the best way that I have tried to get people to make connection is it's like a domino effect. So you could have this predisposition genetically, you could have maybe some gut stuff, you could be perimenopausal, you could be wherever life is happening, some of the supplements you're taking, all these little dominoes are sitting there. One factor, we don't know what it is, can like trigger it, and it's a domino effect, and everything underlying is triggered. Typically, though, with telogen effluvium, like you said, which was so great, I would say, I kind of like to say that 3 months, because sometimes by 3 months, you see it. It's
Mhm.
obvious. It's no longer just, oh, maybe, maybe not. So that
Mhm.
at 3 months, you really see this excessive amount of shedding. You have to then think back. That's kind of what we do is we're like sleuths, like Inspector Gadgets, what situation happened and kind of go backwards of what that was. So if it's telogen effluvium, that's in that resting phase. So it means that it's just the resting phase hairs are just coming out, coming out, coming out. What I like to do and how we combat that, because we don't know exactly what those factors are, is that is where supplementation comes in. That is where topicals that we know we can kind of, we know there's a lot of plant-based and minerals out there that act as fertilizers and can help anchor in some of those hair follicles so that they can just regenerate, they're allowed the fiber to kind of have more lasting effect and not come out so rapidly and kind of allow the cycle to get balanced again. And those things, and I believe in supplementation too from nutraceuticals. I'm a big believer in that with telogen and effluviums. If you find brands that you believe in, as well as an increase in certain vitamins and minerals based off of your workup. And we can go into that as well. And if it has not, it will repair itself, but it takes about another 3 months to get back on that cycle. So it's a patience game. It's not going to be immediately everything is back. The body, remember, hair is a non-essential tissue. It's made up of cells. The body has to be at its prime activity, or you have to be overloading in things that you're deficient in to give the hair to remain at its best and to retain healthy function. The anagen is the growing phase of fluvium, meaning the hair is coming out while it's in the growing phase. And that is typically, again, a shock nutritionally, hormonally, and a multifactorial of things. That what we try to do is the opposite, is we want to be able to kind of trick the body to think that it's always in a growing phase or the follicle. So there are topicals that, again, do that. So it makes the hair follicle feel like, oh my gosh, I'm an anagen, I can't go, because it's feeding it all of the fertilizers, the nutrients, the cells are just rushing to as blood's in the blood source. So that anchors it in similar to the same way, but keeping it in the most healthiest state, where in that telogen phase, it's already about to exit to make way for the new one. And we want that new hair to not be impacted by the same disruption of the one that is growing out during telogen. So it's just, they're doing the same thing, rapid shedding. Again, no bald spots, no massive white space. That's when your ponytail is thinner, your part looks thinner. Those are primarily going to be all effluvium-based hair shedding and hair loss.
And so how does one tell if they have telogen effluvium or anagen effluvium?
You'll see the bulb. You'll see the bulb.
Okay. And so
and I'll say this too. Let me push back on that a little bit, or clarify that a little bit. That is like for your at home, but then at that point, you need to go deeper to a trichologist or a dermatologist, and then we can do a trichogram or do the scope, be able to truly amplify that hair fiber, and we can see what's going on magnify the scalp. So then you can get a clear understanding. But your initial diagnosis is going to be about, is the bulb there on the hair? Like, where is it? Is it keratinized bulb still there or not? And then go further to get a true professional understanding, because you want to be clear of where you are so that you have a reference for yourself. Because in the telogen effluvium, you still are going to be shedding hair. The most important part is that new hair coming up. You will see that will be impactful, and you will see that result in those 90 days. Whereas in the anagen, it should just stop shedding, because the anagen effluvium, the shedding should just be reduced because the hair should be anchoring in. So you should see a new hair in the telogen, and then you should see an anchoring into the hair of the anagen. And that's how you can tell if you've passed or your body is now in a normal functioning hair growth cycle.
And so telogen and anagen could have the same causes. So virus, postpartum, stress, and your body is just going to, for whatever reason, go telogen or anagen with your shedding, and the rehabilitation would be the same.
Absolutely.
Nutrients, maybe some topicals. Okay, interesting. That clarifies a lot. I've actually really not understood the difference between the two, and I've not been able to get straight information.
Okay, yes.
Thank you. That is mildly helpful. So we're going to put postpartum hair loss, menopause. These are all going to go in the effluvium.
So menopause, yes, postpartum, but menopause is a whole different topic and conversation, because menopause also can begin and trigger hormonal hair loss that is inflammatory and is balding. So you can get shedding and effluvium, but you also begin to get true miniaturization of what we call when the hair follicle begins to shrink. Or the diameter of the hair fiber begins to narrow out. menopause is such an aging hair is now a big scientific medical research topic right now, and they're making connections with gut health with menopause, and how the way that our body certain nutrients and minerals are not processed as efficiently through menopause, that are directing, they're making a hair loss, hair thinning connection. Oxidative stress, which just the, again, the fiber aspect, right? But then on the scalp, you break down the way that the types of tools that we use in our hair. Think about the blow dryers that are, the keratinization gets weaker and weaker. You see a miniaturization of the diameter. The years of hair color or hair dye, just all of these, wearing hats, things that create pressure, just lots of things we take for granted that over time do create oxidative stress on our scalp. That is a huge connection with menopause too, in the way that's estrogen levels with protection of the scalp and the hair follicles. So there's all this interesting data that's coming up. So menopause can lead to true androgenic and hormonal hair loss, where it's not a shedding, it's a true hair loss, as well as you can experience some of the effluviums as well with that. So that's like a whole different category.
Mhm. So when we have this age-related hair change, it's a stew of gut health, sex hormones, and is it estrogen only, or is it
No,
also
that's a great question. So it's estrogen, testosterone, the androgen. So DHT, we know for sure, dihydrotestosterone. And with women, again, it's so unique and individual, but that increase is scientifically proven to trigger genetic hair loss. So if you're predisposed to any genetic hair loss, we know for a fact that DHT is an androgen that triggers that. That's something we know for sure. And that is where you can have drugs or prescriptions like so minoxidil is the only FDA approved drug that can say regrows hair, which you really can't regrow hair because once the blood is gone, it's gone. But what you can do is revive or awaken the hair follicle. My belief and my practice is all plant and mineral based. So there are like saw palmetto, I think you guys had a question about that, is a known natural, we believe, even though it's anecdotal, I know it works, is a natural DHT blocker. And there are more and more natural DHT blockers that we are finding out there through plants. So where was I going with this?
So that's we're getting into the stew of age-related hair change.
So we're menopause, we're saying that the gut with nutrition, the sex hormones, and an increase in testosterone that creates androgens that develop dihydrotestosterone.
So that's where you want your saw palmetto.
Yes, that's why that's important. The breakdown of vitamin D, I think the inflammatory, people are like, I'm such a believer, and anecdotally, I believe it in my practice, for me personally, as we age, the way we process vitamin D, and it's anti-inflammatory. I'm sure, can teach me so much about that. Anti-inflammatory, as we age, like that's the key. It's everything needs to be anti-inflammatory. And with menopause, our bodies are highly inflamed if we don't create these nice balances. So I have found the reduction of inflammation is such an important conversation when we are getting into these aging, as our bodies, age, and our hair follicles age and our skin ages. It's all about anti-inflammatory, and that is becoming so repetitive. And I think a lot of people are thinking it as a cop out, but it's just facts. And I think more and more data is just going to prove that.
With so many things, whether it's mental health,
Yes.
healthy aging. Now we can put it in our hair
Yes.
too. And then you talked about, which I'm really curious about, is the reduction of keratin as we age.
So keratin layers are on the scalp as well as on the hair fabric and fiber. When the keratin breakdown on the scalp happens, you have to think we talk about the flora, the microbiome, you're disturbing the entire organ. So I like to think of and for me to get people to understand how important scalp is, I say, think of your body, like every finger, like your fingernail is an organism of community, is an organism community. Our skin is an organism community. So our organ of the scalp is an organism community. Because the keratin is so necessary, and this the function of the overall health of maintaining the microbiome, maintaining the solid, that's where the hair follicle resides. When that is worn away, you're reducing the foundation of what that organism is based off of. It also allows for an overproduction or an underproduction of sebaceous glands, so your oil, your sudoriferous glands, your sweat glands, all these things that make and create the moisture environment for a hair fiber to be a nice feeling fiber. Mm-hmm. All of those things are compromised. So whenever I think there's an overplay of thinking you can put keratin onto keratin. You can't do that. Those things are all superficial. What you want to do is you can literally change the microbiome and improve the scalp microbiome. And that's really what we want to be thinking about, not so much thinking about replacing keratin anywhere, because that's going to be more internal. We want to think about ensuring that we are respecting and maintaining the microflora and our own scalp microbiomes.
Okay, so this is new to me. We have keratin in our scalp on the surface?
On the surface.
Oh, I thought this was just an internal thing and it printed out.
No, so it is, because keratinization is just the hardening of cells. So there's keratin on the scalp, and then your hair fiber is a keratin thread.
Wow, okay. And so the keratin that's on your scalp is there to maintain the microbiome.
It's there as a function of the organ, yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay, and so this was one of my questions, actually. We had a lot of community questions around this. So I know that they have keratin treatments now. They even have like clean keratin treatments. So this is not, and I'm just going to jump right to it. This is not your recommendation. Your recommendation, if I'm hearing this correctly, is to make sure that you are supplementing, and through diet, you're making sure that you have enough of the building blocks of keratin inside your body. And then you're saying to take care of your microbiome so that you can maintain keratin on the surface.
So 2 things, let's clarify. Yes, the internal of keratin production, the health of the body is going to allow that to function for sure. But there are also habits in the way that you shampoo, cleanse, and take care of your scalp that help retain that keratin on the surface, or that's part of the makeup of the scalp organism or organ. And the keratin of the fiber, that's going to be based on how are you maintaining lipids, proteins, and humectants on your hair fiber or fabric. 2 separate things. So keratin base, you can have protein. It's just protein, right? Keratin is a form of protein. So there are different types of proteins. You know that from a plant-based protein, you know that as a vegan, right? All those different sources. In hair fiber, it's important to find protein sources that are superficially acting as bonders to allow the moisture and the lipids, which create the non-frizzy, pretty, either fluffy curls or straight, whatever your hair texture or hair fibers are. So you can't really put protein, when you do a keratin treatment, or what they are doing is pushing in with excessive amount of heat, and a lot of times some type of polymer, a superficial coating into the holes of the cuticle, because the cuticles are like shingles on a roof. So you're just pushing in, and it slicks them down so it's shiny. You get a lot of reflection. It has elasticity. My pushback is there are treatments and ways and rituals to handle your hair to be able to ensure that you are paying attention to your own lifestyle habits, hair processes, to retain the proper amount of protein, moisture, and lipids through a hair ritual practice. And there are so many ways to do that with amazing brands and products out here in the market.
I mean, I feel like I can't wait until later. I gotta know now, what is this? You talked about the way that you shampoo. For keratin, how would you treat your scalp? And is
So let me just go to what I say a proper shampoo. And I just, if I feel the one thing that if I could change the world of beauty,
Mhm.
my personal philosophy is changing the way shampoo is seen. Shampooing is a ritual. So for me, there should always be a pre-scalp and pre-hair fiber treatment that goes on to your scalp before you use any detergent-based shampoo. So that means you're using an oil like on the scalp. I love because you shampoos don't clean the scalp. Let's just get that clear. We miss that's a whole nother episode.
I
Shampoos don't clean scalps. Shampoos are not designed to clean scalps. Shampoos are designed to remove the oil from the base of the hair fiber. We want to maintain the microbiome of the scalp. So essential oils, like lemon, citrus, they are what reduce inflammation, increase cellular turnover. You want to almost oil cleanse the scalp, and you're protecting the keratin. So a lot of the shampoos, the surfactants, those things wear away on the scalp, the keratin of the scalp as well. So in order to retain optimum scalp health, I believe that anytime you use a detergent shampoo, you should be using a shampoo scalp treatment that is oil based. Preferably, I prefer that. Also, on the ends or the fabric of your hair, depending on what type of fabric you have, remember this is a dry cleaning experience. Your most luscious mask, a pre-treatment oil. This is the time you really treat those ends, because while the hair is, this is all going on the hair dry and dirty before any water touches it. And women of color and women that have like African based hair, this is how I've been treated. We've treated our hair for years. And you find these rituals in all over cultures like India. I meet when I was in Turkey and Istanbul, and you're talking with people. These are just cultures and rituals that have been around in some shape or form all around the globe. So this is nothing new. It's just now we're positioning it in the beauty market and in the beauty space of what real true hair care and hair wellness is. These things are essential and integral. Like I said, shampooing is a ritual. It's not like getting in the shower and washing your body after working out. It's not the same thing. So I like that going onto the hair, scalp and hair, dry and dirty. For thicker textures of hair, I have my clients and I suggest you should have like your hair treatment linens that you know that you have when you're going to do a proper shampoo at least one time a week, whatever your rhythm is. And you tie that up, you put a silk scrunchie on, go to bed. In the morning, you wake up prepared for your shampoo. I like shampoo applied or transferred into condiment or applicator bottles that have a nozzle, because I like the shampoo to be directly applied to the scalp, dry, dirty, before you even get into the shower. The hair, and most of us are like, really cautious about the shampoos we're purchasing, but we're not allowing them to do what they're intended to do, which is to truly support the hair fiber at the root and to remove the debris at the root. The shampoo isn't designed to maintain the scalp. So with that, you let it sit, have coffee, do your thing, do your skincare routine. Then you get into the shower, add water, emulsify. If your hair will take what it needs, this is the other thing about retaining or approaching this like dry cleaning, because it's brilliantly designed. The hair will take what it wants, and when you are cleansing or shampooing out, you can remove what it doesn't need. Over time, your hair will build up such a natural, healthy balance of this cuticle almost being so properly balanced with lipids, moistures, and proteins, because there's this delicate balance that you're doing. So things like frizz become less of an issue. Overusing a flat iron becomes less of an issue. You love the way it air dries. You're more open to, letting it air dry. Your chemical services become less. It just changes the true wellness of your hair. So that's my soapbox thing, is shampooing is a ritual. And if we could explore how to do that, if make it personal for you, of course, but that's a game changer, I believe, in hair care and hair wellness.
Okay, that is amazing. And now, so I stopped using, I read about this no poo thing.
Okay.
I feel like, I started reading about this no poo thing in my early 20s, and I was like, I'm gonna get there one day. I don't know how. I read about maybe Julianne Moore doing this, and she had to go into hiding for months, and it was like this long process. So I was like, okay, at some point there's going to be a time where I can just hide out and stop using shampoo. So I got there. I'm still cleansing my hair with a cream cleanser. So there's no surfactants. It's essential oils. It's basically essential oils and
Okay.
cream. And I put it in. I really massage the scalp with one of those little scalp stimulators with
Yeah.
the cream on there. And it took 6 to 8 weeks for my scalp and hair to kind of rebalance. But my hair is, I mean, my hair's never been healthier.
It's
Scalp.
beautiful.
You'd think I would have like brushed my,
No, it's
you'd
beautiful.
think I would have brushed my hair for our 2 hour hair combo, but
No,
I
it's
forgot. But what do you think about that? Because I think with the cream cleanser, I'm taking a baby step towards really just oil cleansing. And so that's my next move is I'm not in love with this cream cleanser. It's fine. It was a nice bridge. And I'm actually feeling like, ooh, I just need to get those really dank oils. I think I need some neem. I think I need some essential oils to just really get in there, oil cleanse the scalp and rinse it out. And I can just do that on my own. And I'm hearing this from you, which is exciting, but then I'm also hearing the surfactant part. Is that necessary?
Well, that's a great question. So this is just again reprogramming the brain of shampooing. So I almost always put that in there because I think for most people, initially it's going to be yes. However, I have clients such that do not use any, they use a shampoo with a moisture shampoo maybe twice a year. Certain
Mhm.
clients have hair types and texture that are just oil cleansed base, and that's what requires for them to retain the hair and the balance. That's what works. So again, it's such a unique individual thing.
And is
Go
that
ahead.
more like a curly hair, a kinky hair, a gray hair?
Yes, that, and I would say very, so some type of an ethnicity where the hair is very dense and maybe dealing with some type of scalp issues, say like a little bit of eczema or so, like it just, we can't bounce. The hair is so dense but beautiful, needs to be some type of cleansing in it, but there's the surfactants, all these things are just negatively impacting the scalp. We find out rhythms of how to oil cleanse
Mhm.
without, so those kinds of hair textures, or just sometimes dense hair. Sometimes it's really what's happening with the scalp and not necessarily with the hair texture or fiber. That's the other part of this equation, right? You can have a very oily scalp and still be curly and frizzy in
Mhm.
terms of the texture and the fiber of your hair. So there's so many types of conditions. That is why I think it is so important to have a keen understanding of like a scalp point of view as well as a hair point of view, because we are okay with interchanging those things, and we have to be better with compartmentalize. They're two separate topics.
So we have so many scalp questions, and I really want to deep dive on that. I'm so tempted to just skip there right now, but I'm going to quickly, if you could walk us through male hair loss.
So
And then,
male hair.
and then we're going to go way back to your ritual and the nope. So many questions, but
Okay.
like we got to get through male hair loss and then we can get there.
So male hair loss is going to be very much how we, similar to menopause.
It's the DHT.
It's the DHT, and that's androgenic or genetic male pattern baldness, androgenic hair loss, is all DHT based. We know that. Additionally, I feel men over shampooing. I believe that's their first domino effect. They don't really think about it. They shampoo, treat their hair like their bodies. And I believe it breaks down the keratinization. It creates oxidative stress. It's like the first domino that starts like tipping in their 20s. If they even change their routine, which I'm hoping to be a part of that movement too, to get them to see that differently, again, you're removing an initial knock of the domino. And there again, there's so many things that we know topically can prevent that. I believe if we were to re-educate and open our minds to all of this science and technology and understanding of plant diet, no one really should be bald in the 21st century if you're paying attention to yourself at the right stages to change your patterns. Like, you really start paying attention when your body is a teenager. Parents are empowering their children with, these are the things that are going to work for you. If you know your grandfather lost a hair and your kid is like, really give them this information, because that's how you have to make these connections to immediately just kind of get in line with, okay, I have to honor this body, take care of this body's coding. And with the right information, we can really prevent a lot of these dominoes and kind of mitigate this even really being a topic.
So we're thinking epigenetics over genetics with this male pattern baldness. And it's interesting because I feel like where epigenetics has been so embraced and people really feel like, okay, genetics are responsible for, you have some doctors saying 1%, 10%. I've heard, some very small numbers thrown out there. And it's interesting because I've never heard epigenetics applied to balding with males.
Really?
You're truly the first person that I'm
Oh,
hearing,
wow. Oh my God. Yes.
which
But
I
that's,
actually think is going to be incredible for
oh,
people to hear.
yeah, I mean, but that's white paper, that's research. Of course, everything that deals with hair loss, of course, men, it's in the studies of drugs for men that all these things get discovered, or science and research for men. So yeah, I mean, it's so much information about that, because that is where all the dollars initially went, were about the genetic based hair loss. And that's why it's called androgenic hair loss, male pattern baldness.
So we actually have we have a bunch of men in our community, and we have a lot of women in our community that are caring for their men at home that are really interested in hearing about this. Um, we particularly have a crew of men in their 20s
Wow.
that have not experienced hair loss yet, but because I think culturally it's this thing of like, oh, men just lose their hair and they are frightened by
Yeah.
this. And they're on super hair, so they're getting those nutrients, they're getting that daily saw palmetto. What else can men do? I'm hearing you talk about,
Invest in the top, find a great topical that you love and just nurture, invest in a topical, get into a routine where you're using, if you know or you see men in your family, regardless of what side, on the paternal or the maternal side, that are shedding and bald, you more than likely you have that trigger, perhaps. Get into a topical, and that topical is just like fertilizer for the scalp anyway. The microbiome loves it. Again, I'm going to encourage them to make their ritual, make it a ritual as well. It can be easier for you because your fibers typically are not that long and you have very little styling, to kind of have to be frustrated about, shampooing your hair, taking time to do a ritual. And I still believe in using pre-shampoo scalp treatments and massaging. Even if not before every shampoo, men should at least incorporate that into their routine every other week. Take time to give yourself a great scalp massage, or get the person in your life or a friend, like, just have a friend circle of scalp massages. You all will do each other so good. That is so major. It does make a difference.
so everyone in their men's group, you can add scalp massage to your agendas. What do you want in a topical? What makes the best fertilizer?
How do I talk about this gracefully? Okay, so lots of, we'll say some hyaluronic acids. I love, there's so many plant-based amazing things out there that are vasodilators. There's some mushroom-based things, again, reducing inflammation. There are proprietary ingredients that some brands have that kind of block that DHT or that extend that anagen phase. Rosemary's, peppermint, saw palmettos in some topicals caffeine is in some mung bean is in some. I mean, there's so many different.
And is caffeine a vasodilator or
Yes,
it is? Okay.
vasodilator. Yeah. So anything inflammatory, vasodilator, increases blood circulation. Yeah, kind of also balances the fungus, like antimicrobial is important. That's very important to have those in some topicals. And most of them, again, the formulations have some different versions of the same bases of plants and caffeines and minerals that kind of create these fertilizing, what do I want? Fertilizing like stabilizers, I guess.
Okay, you've got me thinking of how I'm gonna cocktail my own little thing coming soon.
Yes, yes.
Okay, awesome. And then so we have actually gotten through my questions. You know, you talked about oxidative stress on the hair earlier. Um, and you talked about it during menopause, or as our hair ages. And so is oxidative stress, is that going to be, and we have community questions around hair dye and how bad is it for the hair? But is that a primary source of oxidative stress, or is it also the products, the heat styling?
Yeah, it's not just hair color, but it is a part of it, but it's more, I think, again, the roughing of how we the shampooing, it wasn't designed, shampoos were not designed to address our scalp. And most of the shampoos that are mass marketed are basically wax, some have some type of wax in them. And all those things just really build up and wear away, and it wear away on that keratin, so it changes lipid production, which makes the hair, the scalp become dry. So oxidative stress it's wear and tear, and then the sun, the salt, anything that is repetitive over and over again on the surface of the scalp is we can consider some type of oxidative stress.
I mean, even just the chemicals in the air.
Environmental pollution, absolutely, absolutely. Very similar to the skin. It's the same. So we can take those same analogies or the same systems, because that's really what we're using as science, is all the science from what's been done in dermatology, and applying that to scalp and using that as kind of like the beta of, okay, let's see, we have some good data on skin, what is applicable to scalp, and how can we improve on the data and get some hard knowledge and not just have it be anecdotal.
Okay. Okay, so more than anything, we had scalp questions.
Okay.
And then I'm also so curious to get your take. I feel like we're seeing an onslaught of these like scalp detox things. And I have not used any because it seems like marketing, and it seems like that's not the way. And so I've gone more into this oil cleansing that you're talking about. How do you feel about that before we get into the community questions?
So oils can be exfoliative. They are. So I am not anything that has a grainy residue or fiber. I just find that I don't, I think that's you're going into a very dangerous territory, because if someone's, it can wreak havoc on the wrong scalp. And the majority of people have some type of, let me find my words right for this. Any type of granule activity that's left over on the scalp is my concern. And I think it's very challenging to properly rinse, especially when we don't really do proper cleansing and shampooing anyway. So and my concern is some of the micro fissures on the scalp as well could create unnecessary, making the scalp want to heal and making too much bacteria or too much protective cells to come white. I just feel like it disrupts the microbiome, where you can use an oil or a cream that has exfoliative properties, or even a liquid that has exfoliative actives or those, super actives, and get the same results. So I don't look for a grainy, sloughing, slough kind of experience for that. And I don't know if I like what that does to the base of the hair fiber as well. Yes, there are certain, if someone has very fine, baby fine, I'm gonna say someone that has more of a European ancestry, maybe overly oily for some just naturally pre-designed that way, that might be a person I would say you'd make a good candidate for a high quality type of scalp mask. But not, it couldn't be grainy in the sense of it would still have to have a nice dissolving aspect to it. And there are very few out there, but there are some there. But I still kind of veer away from any of those rough textured things on the scalp.
It's kind of how we feel about skincare, where that mechanical exfoliation, has those micro tears, there's inflammation. That's where you're going to get bacteria.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
would you ever recommend, kind of like we do for skincare, a chemical exfoliant? So is there ever a scalp that you would put some salicylic acid, lactic glycolic? Would you ever introduce those to the skin?
Absolutely. Yeah, not the entire scalp, but definitely certain that's scalp issues. So silica is amazing for true dandruff when it is dandruff and it's dandruff. That's another thing we have to get into. People see flakes and think it's dandruff, and that's just not true. And so you can have dehydrated dry scalp, dandruff, eggs. There's just so many fungus, bacteria that all look like flaky scalp. So we have to be careful with that. The thing is, though, a lot of the dandruff properties can soothe some of those issues, but it also can exacerbate a flaky scalp or just dry scalp into something that's really bad. So, it's like you get a relief initially because those ingredients that are typically in products that are designed to manage dandruff can have a positive impact on the flake, but it also can totally disrupt that microbiome and create an extremely dehydrated scalp, dry scalp that goes into severe flaking that has nothing to do with dandruff. It goes in the opposite direction almost.
Okay, well, side note, I'm going to send you some of our acid potion, which is
Oh,
a formula that has salicylic, glycolic, lactic. There's reishi in it, which
okay.
and helps with the inflammation. I'm going to send this to you.
Oh,
And
thank
is
you.
it something that you would recommend on specifically what kind of dandruff and how to use it?
Oh, yeah.
Well, we have a new application there. Okay, so that was I just wanted to get that hit on those products out there because there's a lot of questioning there. And now we'll go into our lightning round, and I've got 3 pages of it. So
Okay.
nice. But I did categorize them, and the most really came around scalp and all types of scalp issues. And so we have so many questions around fungal dandruff. We've got questions around eczema. We've got so many questions around this phenomena of sudden wet dandruff is how some people have described it. I also have descriptions here of waxy buildup, greasy buildup. And we have questions around psoriasis, dry, flaky skin. So it's all across the board. And I'm thinking maybe you could just walk us through.
Let's start. I think I can start from here. That once, let's say general scalp health and any abnormal condition, once a scalp condition has triggered, it never goes away. Never goes away. It's managed. So I like that is really important, right? So if you know that you have to manage this condition, you have to then begin to think about, okay, all those multifactorial possible domino things that are triggering you. With scalp issues, there we know it's yeast related. So there's a huge connection with gut and again, the microbiome of the scalp. And we start talking about buildup, we didn't have to get into products and then the types of products you're using, any allergic reactions, all these topical things before we even start thinking about the actual medical condition or the dehydrated skin issue. So product buildup is one of the number one things that gets misdiagnosed with dry skin because people use some products that have a lot of waxy buildup in it and do not shampoo. A lot of times it's just typically people have not shampooed properly, and there could be some early signs of bacterial movement growing in there. And that's really what you see. An overbuildup, not so much of the Malassezia, which is Malassezia is a fungus. So when you say dandruff is a yeast of type of, we have it all over our bodies. It's when it builds up, it destroys the cells of the scalp. So the scalp is made up of, you should have about the horny layer, which is the top, so the very surface of our scalp, should be like 25 to 35 layers. When you have dandruff, or it is only about 10, so the skin cells are just rapidly turning over because it's a fungus that doesn't allow them to lock in. So when dandruff, we think of, we want to remove flakes, we want to remove and remove, but no, we want to slow it down and let it lock in. Yes, from an aesthetic point of view, we want to get rid of the flake, but the goal is to get the cells to slow down. So when I'm thinking of managing scalp conditions, I'm talking from a place of we either want to kind of under control, we want to soothe, get things, slow things down. Sometimes it could be that it's congested and builds up. That's that waxy stuff. So we want to get it overly, it's congested. We want to get it revved up. And sometimes we just want it to neutralize. So all of us will fall somewhere between those patterns and lean towards one of those directions, depending on our condition. When we say wet dandruff, you're talking about oily dandruff, right? So it's really a collection of your overly producing, your sebaceous glands are just on fire, right? And it's mixing again, environmental factors. There are cells there. So is your skin congested? Do you have some Malassezia there that could be being a little bit of, is it bacterial ridden or is it product buildup ridden? It's like all these things when you're looking at the scalp. Or is it just not even have to do with Malassezia? It could just be a fungus. This is so interesting when I deal with clients, women of color that wear, or people that do extensions or use some type of protective styling. And I was noticing like where I was seeing this movement of these bacteria in random spots. And I was like, what is going on? Like I would heal a condition and then there would be these areas. The long fingernails and the scratching, it was delivering bacteria into these open wounds that I would heal. They would be back in these protective styles. And every time they touch, they're going from here to scratching. So I had it took me forever to make that connection. And that to me was like, we don't think of it, but it's true. The minute I was like, take the nails off to heal this problem, completely resolved. Oh. So it's amazing of all the things that we don't, when we are in these certain conditions, all of the styling that we do or some of the external things that we do, how they directly implicate the health of the scalp. And that's where we have to make these connections with all of this focus on of the hair fiber. I'm glad that people are talking about the scalp, because I need you to understand that the focus, something that you do to feel great and it's fun and very fashion forward. And I think hair should be a fashion accessory when you want it to be. There is still a fundamental impact that's having on your scalp. And when we have these fashion moments, there's a responsibility to the organ that we want to be connecting to as well. So I'm glad to know that people want to know about scalp. So when you touch your scalp open wounds with 30 fingers, you can be creating a bacterial petri dish. Same thing with our faces. And again, it should make us also think about the products that we're putting on our scalp, on our hair fibers, because we want those products to be able to integrate into our microbiomes in healthy, supportive ways. And a great product should do that. Occasionally, we all, again, have to have that night of, again, your fashion, runway red carpet look. Everything's not going to be supportive of the organ. But those are going to be, you're going to shampoo that out. You're going to start from scratch, whatever it is. But for the majority of your existence, anything you do to your hair fiber or put on your fabric, think about the residual impact on the scalp, because you either are improving it, you could be hurting it, or you could be missing out on an opportunity to give it something to really balance it out. And again, going back to my soapbox change your shampoo habit ritual, the right pre-scalp pre-treatment will be a game changer for that. And it's so you don't even have to think about it. So anyone and everyone, regardless of scalp condition, be it psoriasis, eczema, dandruff, pre-scalp treatments are essential. But some for dandruff, you might not need an oil base. Yours might be serum based, or it may be mask based, or it may be clay based, or it may be oatmeal based. There's so many ways that I help solve these flare-ups, because remember, they're never going to go away. It's about us working together to create management rituals and management cycles on your scalp care.
So how does someone tell if they have dandruff, if they just have dehydrated skin, if they have eczema or psoriasis, or if they're just dealing with waxy buildup from product?
So let's start with the true medical condition, psoriasis, eczema. Psoriasis is like, it's raw. It's not, that. It's very raw. It's silvery scale. It can be sore. They can bleed. There's sometimes hair loss in these areas. That's a true medical condition. And typically, psoriasis are flare-ups that are that come out of with diet. Like if you've been in some people, heavy yeast eaters, they can be stress induced, and then they may have flare-ups on other parts of the body as well. Typically, psoriasis accompanies some other dermatological or skin condition. But they are, like I said, they're raw, they're skin, they're red, they're scaly. Eczema is, again, a larger patch. It's going to be in a patch formation throughout the scalp. And it typically comes in isolated areas, where if it's any type of dandruff, dry dehydration, that's going to be throughout the scalp. If you have patches of these areas that are kind of random, that's a first sign for me of oh, that sounds like eczema. It's going to be itchy.
Mm-hmm.
You will also, I have found in those areas, see some type of, you can relate it to almost a telogen effluvium, where it feels like there's some hairs or something missing in there. Typically, I think that comes from just the mechanical damage and how we itch and the things that we do. So that typically comes with that. For dandruff, and dry scalp or dehydrated scalp, I use the idea of dried onion and salt or sugar. If you see flakes that look more like dried onions from that's going to that is a yeast, that's dandruff. If you're seeing little white flakes that look like salt or sugar, that's dry scalp, some type of dehydration. That's just a topical, that skin needs to be hydrated. You're missing some lipids, some moisture. Those are easy fixes. The dandruff, which are the more uh, onion type flakes, that is an imbalance and an overproduction of malassezia, and we need to slow down the cellular turnover while we're getting rid of the flakes. Now, that dandruff will turn into a wet dandruff if you also are accompanied with an overactive sebaceous gland. So
Okay.
you will see it will still be flaky, but it will feel like it's stuck because it does get stuck. But you will also be experiencing flakes occasionally. And the last one was, you asked, there was another one.
How can we tell if it's just that waxy buildup from product?
Yes. That's my favorite. Where is it located? Because almost 9 times out of 10, no one shampoos, especially people that have a lot of hair. The lower quadrant of from the nape all the way almost to the occipital bone, like people never shampoo there. And then in between, behind the ears, and then here, people don't shampoo. It's amazing the way people, the lack of technique of cleansing and shampooing the hair. It's kind of unbelievable. I mean, I would not have believed it as someone as like a colorist for many years in the salon had I not gone into this side of the business. And so it has an odor sometimes. It will feel almost clumpy onto the hair. And if you did like a clarifying shampoo, and shampooed with the proper technique, you would get a benefit. Or if you did a proper pre-shampoo scalp treatment, it would just kind of wear itself off and you'd be like, oh, this is what a clean scalp feels like.
Hmm.
Because you feel it. You feel the difference for the first time.
Okay. So I feel like, you know, that covers many of our questions. But I have one in here, pregnancy and postpartum dandruff. Do you think that could be attributed to changes in the gut?
Gut and hormonal. I would say hormonal, um, and gut for, well, I got to think about that because I don't know enough about pregnancy gut health. I feel very blind. I just, that's really out of my bandwidth. So I don't know about that. Postpartum, though, I do know as the body, the iron, everything's all over the place and it can manifest itself. And we believe that there is a genetic connection between dandruff too. I forgot to leave that out. That is something that's being proven in the medical community. So again, one of those domino effects that kind of
Mhm.
trigger. So
Okay.
yeah.
And so just a quick on treatment, rule out waxy buildup by really going in and doing an oil cleanse, doing a proper cleansing. That feels like a way to get in there. Dry, flaky skin, oil treatment.
And apple cider vinegar, like hyaluronic acids, like it's saying again, a lot of those same beautiful, just moisture, those moisture lipids. You want a combination of moisture and lipids. So your moisture base, and you do need a little bit of serums and something that has a little bit of lubrication because that's going to seal in that moisture. So it's finding that right balance that fits your lifestyle, your hair type and texture, where you feel like you can integrate the pre-shampoo scalp treatments are definitely going to help stabilize that. But then in between, you want to be able to nourish that scalp with the proper moisture and lipids, humectants and lipids.
If we want to make our own pre-shampoo scalp treatment, what would you do? What oil would you choose?
Ooh. So I'm citrus by far, or my somewhere something in the citrus family would be my active because I think they're amazing. Like I love lemon and orange. I probably have a little bit of lavender in there and I don't know what my base would be. Like that's the hard thing for me. I don't know what I would do as a base. Something probably, but see, I don't want the moisture. I don't know. I would want some because I would want it to have a little bit of fatty acid, but I
Mhm.
would want something a little, I don't know. I'd have to think about that. But definitely my active would be citrus based for sure. because
Okay.
I love what they do. I love what a good orange and lemon do to the scalp. I
I think
do.
you've inspired me. I think I'm gonna do some sesame,
Ooh,
citrus, and a little bit of neem.
ooh, that sounds nice.
I think I'm gonna start doing that instead of this like cream.
Yeah. Oh, the oil is great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we have one question around cradle cap. Actually, we had 10 people ask this one question around cradle cap in older children.
So this is is it diagnosed? This is the problem that I want to make sure we clarify in the conversation. Like, is this medically diagnosed as cradle cap, or is this the parent anecdotally? That's because those are two separate things. So let me go
I think
from
it's
like
anecdotal. I think it's
anecdotal.
anecdotal, and I think parents are finding, and I've even seen this on my own children. It's like a darker, it's like darker pieces of, I'm assuming that they're seeing the same thing I'm seeing, like the darker pieces of skin and buildup that are firmly attached to the scalp.
Okay, so again, yeast, 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 yeast. So I'm little children, I don't know, typically a pasta, bread, just their diet, I don't, yeast is going to be the number one thing. And I believe in putting spot treating those things with topical probiotics. I just use
Hmm.
a liquid probiotic and I would test it, and I have cleared up so many things just by doing that. You can do it as a pre-shampoo at night, maybe try a little spot, shampoo in the morning, and then just throughout it kind of heals itself, and then every now and then you have to do those treatments. In terms of shampooing or using for young kids, I like things so clean. um I would really make herbal. If I had a child that had a lot of buildup that way, I would probably do an infusion of some type of apple cider vinegar with like a lavender mix, and
Mm.
use that as like scalp washes and rinses in between the shampooing.
Okay, cool. I've used coconut oil in the past where I'll really like go in where there's just stuff stuck on my kids' heads. I'll do like coconut oil massage and it seems to just kind of lift it out and you get that antifungal from the coconut.
Yeah, it does lift it out. My goal would be not to create the cell so it doesn't produce. So that's how I think is I want to get things to calm down so that it's not producing or producing less frequently.
Yeah.
So it's just not as I just don't want to get to the symptom. I want to be able to help you figure out what does the scalp need so that we don't have this so frequently happen, because I'm like, we want to stop, mitigate that, manage that.
Okay, cool. Um, okay, so going into our hair loss community questions, and I really had to whittle them all down. But so many questions around, is there anything you can do in pregnancy to avoid that postpartum effluvium?
There are topicals. So I know there are topicals that you can use. Like I said, that most, again, you would have checked with the medical practitioner, but I do have clients that use certain topicals that just help them retain, lock that in, and that's what they do to get through. They're always plant-based, but again, it's a decision in the conversation that you and your medical practitioner can discuss. But there are safe topicals that women can do.
Okay. Um, we have a question, we have a few questions around trauma and hair loss, which feels like it goes into the effluvium category. We had someone in particular ask about her father died and her hair started falling out when she was 14 and she's an adult now and it never stopped falling out.
So I would have to then, this is where like that empathy, sorry for your loss, that empathetic understanding is she completely bald yet? So we have to like kind of quantify. This is where that side of my brain as what do we mean falling out, right? Let's kind of make the story more tangible. Is she
I
completely
don't think she's bald. I don't
So
think
she
she's,
just feel like she's seeing a continuum of shedding.
yeah.
So if there's a continuum of shedding, if it's constant shedding, that's deficiency. That means it's nutritional,
Mhm.
iron. I don't know. I need age. I need more context, right? But it's something deficiency based that if it's still continuously happening. So thyroid, hormone, nutrition, hormonal, some mineral or zincs, you can be lacking in vitamin D, you can be lacking in vitamin B, your folates. Iron is a huge thing, and the ferritin for women is a big thing depending on her age. I would want a little bit more information to kind of be able to guide her in a more specific direction.
Okay, fair. Um, you know, and so many of these questions we've actually covered in our conversation. So alopecia, someone who has lost their eyelashes with alopecia and autoimmune, once you've lost that hair, is there any way for it to come back?
Sometimes they do. We don't know why they do and why they don't. There is proven, again, there are a lot of those topicals that are being same kind of concept that are being used for hair are now being applied to brow and lashes. Red
Mhm.
light, we know again that inflammation of the blood source is there, and they are not a terminal hair. The eyebrows are a vellus hair, so it doesn't have the same type of growth cycle like the hair on our hair does, but they do grow back. Think of it more like the hairs on your arm.
Mhm.
And we have seen results. So I would say, how long has it been? Has there been any attempt to grow them back? Um, and if there is going to be follicular activity there that the brows want, they will. I have seen clients who've had melanomas removed, scar tissue, plastic surgery. They come back not as thick, but you do get some movement there. So there is an opportunity, but it also may not. And unfortunately, we don't really know why.
Yeah. Okay. Um, growth after chemo. I mean, I feel like I'm almost gonna say you've given us so much information around nutrition and putting the hair fertilizers on to encourage that growth.
And sometimes the reality of the chemo is so just really kills off the hair follicle, or really, does a disruption into the function of the cycle. And the body is so delicate at that point in time. I feel that I stay away from a lot of that when people are still kind of balancing their bodies, because I feel like I don't have the knowledge to guide for those vital organs. So I like to give them suggestions, and I will, depending on how their medical teams are open to what they can do and cannot do. That's kind of how I take that case by case, but I would never generally speak on that because that is such a delicate body situation. I've had some clients have amazing results, and then some clients that really don't, and no one can figure out why some do and why some don't.
Okay, got it. Um, mercury fillings and hair loss. We had a lot of questions around heavy metal and mercury fillings.
So there is, again, this is a lot of anecdotal things that are out there. The coppers, the mercuries. We know heavy metals are not. We know they are awful to the hair. We know that the hair retains them. We know that it impacts our color treatments, all those things. Some anecdotal evidence that it can be, but again, we don't know that yet. So there is some definitely anecdotal. We know the hair retains it. How that impact is on scalp and hair loss is yet to be seen, but I think you can make a connection with the right conditions. Again, that domino effect, that could be a trigger for someone that makes a follicle. It could be deficient in something. I think those things could be reality. So I don't um, rule it out, but there's much more data that needs to be accumulated before I can really go behind that 100% of what it does and how it impacts.
Okay, got it. Um, PCOS and hair.
Yes, yes, major. That's another one of those hormonal things with women. You don't all of our beautiful body functions, if they are disrupted, again, those organs that are vital to humanity and to our existence, when there's any disruption, absolutely can trigger telogen effluvium. They can they can trigger inflammatory alopecias. So hair loss can be definitely triggered as a result of the infrequency or of our menstrual cycles. Yes, definitely a contributor to hair loss.
Okay. And then we had a few mamas write in that had young children with short, loose anagen syndrome. And is there anything they can do to support their children?
Yeah, so that means the hair has no hair sheath. So it's the structure of the hair is kind of off. That's being gentle. When I see these conditions, some people get responsive, some people don't. I think that there are, in terms of treating it, because the hair is just so fine and delicate and just doesn't grow, you think it doesn't grow past a certain point. There are products on the market that are made for thinning fine hair that I think are safe enough to use for children because they are plant-based and scientifically clean enough for young kids that strengthen the hair fiber. And there you can be used. I would love to be able to guide someone directly to a particular line. I just don't feel comfortable putting it on the community right now because I'm getting in trouble for that kind of stuff sometimes. But I always like to help moms, so I would definitely love to. There are two things I can tell you for sure that clients are using.
What ingredients should they be looking for?
I
And
don't. That's the thing. I don't know the ingredient, but
we're gonna tell these moms then to maybe they can DM you, email you.
yes, tell them to DM me because I would love to give them that information because if it can be helpful, it's great for them and great for the like little precious one too. So I want to give them that info.
Okay. So our next category of a million questions was gray hair. Gray hair, and I could just whittle down all of the unique questions into, is it possible to reverse? Why do we have premature graying? I'm really going to say that they can all be whittled down into that. And then, I've got a couple questions around hair dye.
So gray is a reduction. We believe in an amino
Oh,
acids. So it means like the amino acids. And we believe it's tyrosine right now. I have to tell you, there's this huge, big, I'm just kind of got this recently. This is a new study on aging hair. And so there is a whole study called gerontology, I believe, that is coming just on stopping graying hair. So this group of people created that whole term and this whole thing. I'm excited to get into this, but so funny you talk about that. So we believe it's a reduction in a certain amino acid. And again, it can be in the melanin in the hair just stops producing. No, we cannot reverse it. There's a lot of anecdotal evidence on all these things. I don't think that's something for me that I'm going to be honest, isn't top of mind. And I don't really think deeper about it, but what can you do to minimize it? I don't know if I believe any of that right now. I just think that based on my limited knowledge, I feel like we're so far away from me being comfortable about even having it going into that conversation.
well, I feel like let's have a follow-up
Okay.
because, yeah, once you do more research and it's out there, I have so many questions about this because since my 20s, I will have episodes of stress. And so it's working long hours and not sleeping enough. It's eating certain foods. It's having alcohol, I mean, like all these different types of stressors. And I used to be able to watch a little patch here in my 20s go gray, like a little shock of gray. And I would rein it in, pay attention to lifestyle, and then it would go back brown. And I would have these strands of hair where you could see on the strand of hair where it was white and where it went back to brown.
Wow. Wow, what a story. No, that's amazing. No,
And
I just
I mean,
I just believe in the power of, I believe like all, it's like, again, getting back to the ultimate power of what we really are, right? And our hair is just a byproduct of that, and all that goodness, and you know, yeah. So I'm fascinated by it, mainly. So my mother is a premature gray person, brilliant white patch she had at 25. So I just was like, oh my God, that's gonna happen to me. You know, it didn't, but there was no stress. She's just all white right there. So I've been fascinated, like, on just in my family dynamics, why I have some family members who are literally white, like not a dark part. It's gorgeous versus the people that don't. So I'm personally turned on about it, and I'm excited to. I want to give you some real hard data because there's some interesting stuff out there, and I don't want to I don't want to pontificate on that, because we can talk about that in a more scientific way.
I would really love to do that. We'll
Okay, that's
make
great.
a
Yeah,
date.
let's
Whenever
do
you're
that.
ready, let me know.
Yeah.
And so then, like our last little questions, I feel like we've covered so much. We did have some questions around how often should you wash your hair?
Ooh, I think I have like something on Instagram about that, like a little chart. So based on hair type and texture, I'm going to give these generalities because everybody wants some type of consistency. If you're fine to medium, primarily I would say Euro ancestry to maybe an Italian, like a little bit of texture. So from the finest to maybe a slight, there's some density there, but you don't feel frizzy. There's no fro. You can let your hair air dry and you feel pretty good about it without product. I don't like to see that hair type or texture shampooed more than 3 times a week. And that's on the max. 2 to 3 times a week is ideal. If you are anywhere from, like, say, medium to a thick, definitely some texture there, a little bit of cuticle raising. So there's a little bit of what you people would call frizz, I would call texture, to someone that has like dense, heavy, coarse, even like very like Irish heavy hair, that is heavy strands, very coarse. That is my 2 times a week is like max.
Mhm.
Anything below that, you should be weekly.
Mm, okay. And does that change when
And let
you're
me say, let me also say, this isn't me not, you can rinse, rinse. It's not rinsing if that's your thing. It's literally putting a cleansing element into your scalp or hair.
Mhm.
That's what I'm
And so
saying.
would that be for the oil?
Say that again.
Would that be for the oil cleansing as well? If you just did oil cleansing, would
Yes,
that be
yes. Yes, that would still apply.
okay? And then we had questions around brushing. Is brushing important? And what kind of brushes should we be using?
Stimulating the scalp is important. Brushing, first of all, if your hairbrush isn't clean or wet, I mean, cleaned and shampooed regularly, keep it away from your hair. I think
Mm,
we just, I get so, you're wondering why you have scalp issues. Look at your hairbrush. If
mm,
it's touching your scalp, and if this brush also is not comfortable, or it creates some type of discomfort, you also creating those micro fissures as well. So think about what you're really putting onto your scalp, and why are you using the brush in the first place. If you're using a brush just for the idea of thinking it's going to magically grow hair and stimulate, put the brush down, use your fingers, or get a scalp massage. That's just the truth. If you're using a brush for an idea of stimulating or bringing your oils into the hair fibers because you have a Euro ancestry or some type of Asian straight hair fiber or texture, and it's a quality, um, natural hair bristle brush that's soft, when it's padded beautifully, I'm all for that. But brushes for me should be used from a styling perspective. They're not from a scalp health perspective, unless you're using some type of stimulating brush, red light technology for scalp care inflammation. A brush is a styling tool unless you're using it, again, like I said, to bring down the oils from the hair. If, again, the quality of the brush, but please clean your brushes. Shampoo and clean your brushes.
Thank you for that. And our last question, because I think you have covered so much, and thank you for being so generous with us, is around baking soda and apple cider vinegar.
I love an apple cider vinegar. I love, 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 love. I love them in any quality ones that are made by brands to make creating your own concoctions at home. I think they serve a great place in any hair regimen.
And how
Baking.
would you use it? How would you put it? How would you work that
So
in?
I like them. So for example, if you're talking about you're a person that shampoos twice a week, consider using an apple cider rinse as a scalp, just removing the oil as a scalp purifier. Think of like toners.
Mm,
They can be used on the hair for just as sealers, and they're rinsed out. Some people of certain hair textures can leave a little bit of it in,
mm,
because it just some of them that have, when you make your own concoction, you know how to cut some of the vinegar odor and know how to really create an aroma in there. It can be a beautiful, because it totally closes that cuticle. They're great sometimes just with a scalp sometimes if you just want to cleanse the scalp with like a cotton pad or some type of cloth just to go through. Baking soda is it does have some benefits. I just sometimes find that I don't like the result of what I think it does to the hair fiber, because it does draw out too much oil for me personally. But if someone has an excessive oily scalp, I think baking soda is great for that. I don't like some of these homemade do-it-yourself, because
mhm.
again, it has that grainy salt. I don't love the texture, but I do think that as a pre-dry on dry hair, putting baking soda in and getting in, like doing a shampoo with a detergent-based cleanser, you'll get some type of benefit from that for sure.
So we're oiling and vinegaring and that's what
Yes,
we're doing. We're eating our
we're
hair,
eating.
we're oiling it, we're vinegaring it, we're loving it. We are wrapping it in oils at night.
Yes,
And
yes.
we're going to find a specialist like yourself if there's really something happening.
Absolutely. Do not, I just don't. There are great trichologists and great people out there that can guide you to that next step if it does require medical, dermatological, if you need a biopsy, because sometimes those things are very real. And if there are, just for, in closing, there was a client that came in and was misdiagnosed, and she had a bacteria infection, a staph infection in her scalp that was
Mm.
in her body. So, this can be serious if you aren't properly diagnosed with some of these scalp conditions. So I think it's exciting to see that the community is very much aware and they're open to this, because it makes me feel like the naysayers aren't really in tune of what's really happening out there, which is good to know.
It's all happening out there. Really, we have never received so many questions.
Oh, that's so
Um,
good to know.
so people can find you, people can become your client.
Yes.
I'm dying to follow up with you when you
Yes, we
get your
will, of
data
course.
on aging hair and
I
graying
would
hair.
love to do something like that, because it's just so much misinformation that that's why I'm diving into it deeper. Like, because I just reading, we've got to be better with, I'm over 40, and we've got to be better with
Congratulations.
I'm way over 40, but
I'm
thank
heading for 40. I'm like,
so it's like
celebration.
I hear women and there's just so much wrong information, right? And so I want to be able to back some of my philosophies with some of the science out there, because I just believe we can do a better deal with communicating to that with women specifically. And we're being misguided. And I want to help fix that.
Thank you.
You're
Well, let's do it again.
Of course, this was a
Let's
fun.
do it again on the gray hair, particularly. And thank you so much.
You're so
And
welcome.
it's so much energy that takes. And I feel like
Thank you. I had a blast.
it's a tremendous amount of work and energy to talk for an hour and a half.
No, 90 minutes. 90 minutes.
Oh, thank
Enough
you.
already. It was fun. And I could go all day. Have a great rest of the day. And I look forward to next steps. Enjoy your holidays with your
You
family.
too. You
I
too.
will. I
And
will.
truly, when you feel like you've got a theory on gray hair,
I will reach out. I will let absolutely.
please hurry because they're taking over, and I'm not, they're there and I love them.
Oh, but your hair is gorgeous. Gorgeous hair.
I'll be happy in silver. My husband is curly and silver, and it's beautiful. So it's
Oh,
beautiful when you're there, but I'll happily put it off for a
yeah,
few
me too.
minutes.
Me too. Have a great rest of the day.
Me too. Thank you
I
so much.
will. Thank you.